This edition of Today in New York City History is sponsored by the History Channel. On June 28th, in 1776, thousands cheer as George Washington's bodyguard, Thomas Hickey, is hanged on the corner of Grand and Christie Streets for trying to poison the general. And in 1969, a pre-dawn riot breaks out when cops raid the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar on Christopher Street. The clash becomes the touchstone for the gay rights movement. That's Today in New York City History. I'm Philip O'Brien.
Welcome to our look back at the 1996-97 school year. I'm Jeff Simmons. More than 1 million students attend public school in New York City, and that number continues to balloon each year. The system has weathered years of bruising attacks, from school openings marred by an asbestos scandal and overcrowding to combative chancellor searches. This past school year was one of monumental reform, heartache, and struggle for many students. Let's take a look back.
In fact, we had an expert
Years of mounting complaints about local school board corruption finally were answered. City, state, and education leaders joined hands to overhaul the structure of city schools. That diminished the power of local boards, shifting control of many hiring and firing decisions over to Chancellor Rudy Crew. In April, the Justice Department gave the final nod of approval.
I'd say this is a very monumental decision.
The power shift let Crew muscle in on troublesome boards in the Bronx and Manhattan, installing his own people to manage affairs. At one point, he defied a court order and wouldn't permit board members into their offices. He also fought a battle against an overcrowding boondoggle. The year began with a system that was 91,000 seats short, so students were learning in closets and hallways, and rooms often carried 2 classes. And 17,000 students fought for 1,300 scholarships to pounce from the public to the private schools. The teachers' union sought arbitration and won on most counts to lessen the head count in each classroom. School officials began stationing trailers at schools to brace for yet another onslaught of students this fall. The belt-tightening years of fiscal austerity loosened up a bit as city officials deposited more money into the board's coffers, promising funds for textbooks, arts education, music programs, and teacher training. And Teachers Union President Sandra Feldman won re-election and also succeeded American Federation of Teachers President Albert Shanker. As the election season heated up, politicians began stumping in schools and raising education as a key issue driving the mayoral campaign.
If we can cut crime, we can improve education together.
Teachers prepared for change, but one mired in fear and controversy. Parents protested a union contract sweetener that relieves teachers from lunchroom and homeroom duty. It wasn't supposed to cost a dime, but later school officials admitted it will cost millions. An all-girls school opened in Manhattan, and discussions got underway for an all-boys school, and also a military school at Fort Hamilton Base. Chancellor Crew held combative town hall meetings and steadily unveiled plans to overhaul special education, slicing over enrollment, adopt tougher curriculum standards, pilot year-round schools, albeit ones that are equipped with air conditioners, and get all third graders reading at grade level before they can be promoted. He didn't exactly meet that goal, but scores climbed higher than they had in 10 years. And Crew released school budget breakdowns to show anyone where the money goes. The State Regents Board announced tougher requirements for graduation and plans to administer exams in different languages for the first time. The school board saw a new president, one anointed with the mayor's blessing, and one expected to handily slide into a second term next month. Like its predecessors, this year was pockmarked with crime, irresponsibility, and death. Students were shot in Brooklyn. A student toppled down an air shaft. 4 Queens high school students were accused of gang raping a girl in school. A music teacher was busted for allegedly carrying on with a student. Thousands of students were missing in the school system's attendance books, and the death of 2 popular teachers drew tears. Bill Cosby's son Ennis and Jonathan Levin, the son of Time Warner CEO Gerald Levin. A Latin king came under fire because of his day job as a school safety officer. But despite the flurry of crimes on school grounds and a staggering jump in reported sex crimes, Chancellor Crew did not relinquish control of his safety squad to the NYPD. Now, safety continues to be a pivotal issue. The school board adopted a tougher discipline code and approved the opening of 6 schools for violent students. And Chancellor Crew also has promised to drop tougher discipline rules for special education students. Coming up after the break, we talk to him about this year's educational landscape and a disturbing trend that just keeps cropping up.
And I feel very strongly and very passionately about anyone who does a bad thing to our children.
Edison.
Rudy Crew's first year in office can be called one of discovery, a period in which he became acquainted with the players and the politics of New York City. But in his second year, he took action. And unlike his predecessor, he was able to navigate a dicey political and professional minefield. I asked him to assess year 2.
The second year, I think, would probably best be characterized as a move, as a real movement. This was less motion and more straightforward movement. You know, what we understood and learned from the first year, we put into motion and began to sort of push an agenda. It was what we started out as calling a systemic reform movement. We really mean that to be the case. This is not about just, you know, sort of creating 1 or 2 flurries in the field, but really moving the entire system.
You mapped out a number of agenda items. What would you say was your greatest accomplishment over this current school year?
I think probably the thing that stands out most in my mind is the ability for this system and for the various constituents throughout the city to have helped in the pushing and the passage of the governance bill. More than anything else, I think that was probably the highlight of the year for me.
What were your concerns about the way things operated in the past, and right now, what type of effect is that change going to have on schools?
With governance passing, I think people got very serious about the notion that there is a structure, a line and staff, or if you will, a command structure in the city school system that has meaning and it has teeth. And both are relevant if you're serious about, you know, creating enough energy to move beyond the inertia of old, beyond all of the past issues and all of the past pitfalls. You need both of those things, and frankly, you need a bit of luck.
Where was the luck this year?
Gosh, in a lot of places. I think that in some ways, being able to have the real presence, to have a number of people kind of come full center on the issue of governance was not so much masterful on my part. It was really the right time, the right place, and all of that lined up appropriately.
Standards. That seems to be one of your major agenda items. Where have we progressed over this current school year?
I think standards and the movement toward higher standards has produced an incredible, deep conversation about the teaching that has to happen in order for children to learn at a higher level. Now, we can talk about test scores and we can talk about the fact that they've gone up, and I'm obviously very, very proud of that. I mean, there is nothing that I want to take away from that.
On reading scores, the biggest jump in a decade, yet there were some out there that said you didn't meet your goal. How did you respond to the criticism?
I frankly never understood that. I just chalked it up to saying that's just New York, and I'll just live and die by however they characterize it. I don't think it's fair. I think it's an inaccurate portrayal. I think if you hit a home run, it's a home run if it goes over the fence. I don't want somebody to say, yeah, but It didn't go 380 feet, and so on and so forth. I think it really is what it is, and these scores went up, and they went up because, frankly, children know more, and teachers are teaching more.
H-O-R-N, no, honorable. H-O-R-O-N, honorable.
I think that there's a larger story to be told, and the larger story is not so much a story of numbers, but it's a story of what are the conditions that happened within a school that made it possible for children to learn more, and that made it possible for teachers to teach better, to teach at a higher level.
Is there something that you view as your biggest failure?
That's always a longer list for me, and you don't have enough film in this thing for me to comment on at all. I think that the business of the systems, the internal systems, the way by which we do business, the way by which we organize our business work, whether it be in the transferring of teachers and some of the problems that we had in terms of schools, districts not having adequate information in terms of behaviors of teachers going from one school to the next. That kind of thing pointed up for me that this has been a system that had years of just decline, that when we cannot and do not have those systems in place, then some of the tragedies that happened, in fact, can happen.
When you say tragedies, you're referring to?
Anytime a child is assaulted, anytime a child is placed in harm's way, I consider that to be a tragedy, a major tragedy. So I don't want to certainly allow for that or to give any kind of a signal that that's going to be tolerated in this system, and the only way to do that is to tighten it up.
What point have we reached when it seems to affect your day-to-day affairs?
Even though I am a chancellor of a school system, I'm also a parent, and I feel very strongly and very passionately about anyone who does a bad thing to our children. And there are people who involve themselves in some activity that I knew to have hurt children here, and I can come apart at the seams over that, because I think that goes to the heart of what this organization must protect. It must protect our children. You accept that something must be done, and you wince, you feel pain because it isn't right yet.
Now, Crew has commissioned a thorough review of the Board of Education's hiring policies because he's troubled that too many staffers with discipline records have been able to jump from school to school. Up next, Rudy Crew's perception of politics and his seemingly cozy relationship with City Hall.
I don't think you have to have a Fifth Avenue fight in order for you to demonstrate your independence.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Simmons. Over the last few months, the team of Rudy and Rudy went on the road, visiting classrooms, and that had critics fearing an unholy alliance. But there were two issues that had the Rudys on opposite corners: police control of school safety and the debate over school vouchers. After Crew refused to cooperate with the mayor's plan to transfer 1,000 of the city's worst students to parochial schools, a private scholarship program was set up. 17,000 applications poured in. I asked Crew how he viewed this mass exodus.
I honestly think that when people say we'd rather have, this particular kind of education than something you're offering, I think that says to me, then get the quality of your product to be good enough, and we'll choose that one as well. So it just simply argues for doing it faster.
School safety. It was a big question over the course of the year. Have we reached a point where you feel there's a middle ground, where a program could even be piloted?
I think we're reaching a point where we've got to, sort of put it together and put a model together. It's easy to say what one doesn't want. It's harder to create what one does want. And I think we now are at a point of having to do the latter, of really simply saying, listen, we think that there are ways by which this collaboration can result in a stronger, more efficient, more well-trained security force, and we need to put some models together to manifest that.
So we might see on a pilot program level some supervision by the NYPD in some of the more dangerous schools?
No. I'm simply saying that that's even too far yet. I'm simply saying that you might see that whatever we do, and however we do it, that it will first be piloted before we start looking at anything on a larger scale.
The election season is heating up now, and Reverend Al Sharpton had said you've not shown independence from City Hall. Where have you shown independence?
If you really are independent, I don't think you have to go out with a sign up over your head and demonstrate it to everybody. I don't, frankly, need the approval of 1,000 people for me to know that I'm an independent thinker and an independent doer. So I don't spend a lot of time trying to prove my independence. I know I have a relationship with this board and with this mayor that is a very good relationship. I don't think you have to have a Fifth Avenue fight in order for you to demonstrate your independence.
Has this mayor been much better towards education in the current school year than the previous one, or do you even feel there's a need for a comparison, that he's been devoted all along?
I don't even think that there's a need for a comparison. First of all, I was not here with any other mayor, so I can't even make any kind of an educated analysis of that. But secondly, it's an unimportant issue. And I'm not a politician. I didn't come here to be a politician. I came here because this is the only agenda that matters to me, the only thing. And if I can prove that the investment in this system comes with a commensurate yield in performance of the entire system, but particularly in the performance of children, then we warrant that investment, and that's what I'm out to do.
How have you learned to handle just the politics of this position over this last year?
A little bit of it has been by virtue of simply, you asked me the question about independence. It's by virtue of being independent. It's by virtue of thinking independently. It's by virtue of simply acknowledging that there is but one mission here, and being very clear and very non-negotiating about what that mission is. When our kids are National Merit Scholar winners, when our kids are increasingly graduating from school, when our reading scores go up, when our math scores go up, when our attendance rates go up, what you will hear from me is that is exactly because we kept our eye on that prize, not because I was out playing, sort of politics and trying to figure out what's the right answer for some other world that I don't really live in.
But Crew does agree that this world in which he lives does have its many challenges, whether it's on a political or a personal front. When we return, we'll talk more personally with the chancellor and show you what has caused him the most anguish.
I will never forget their mourning, their pain.
Welcome back. Beyond the rather public role of Crew's position, there is the private side of the job. Behind the scenes, the chancellor slipped into schools away from the camera's glare to read to students, eat lunch with them, just to see what they like and dislike. He also spent more time settling into city life, attending the World Series and strolling through museums. But his second year also was one of sadness. Over the last 10 months, city schools witnessed the deaths of several students and teachers. Crew's visits to hospitals, grieving families, and funeral homes became an unfortunate ritual. Also, we had two beloved teachers over this last year in the system who had been killed, Ennis Cosby and Jonathan Levin. And in both cases, you've known the family. How did this affect you, and how did it affect the system?
I watched the students at Taft High School at Jonathan Levin's funeral, and I will never forget their mourning, their pain. This was someone that they loved, and what it does to me is it literally says that on the one hand, we have created in this very special place a real bond of trust and love and affection that this teacher was able to do, and the same would be true for Ennis. And you create this wonderful, beautiful bond, and then someone blows it up. Someone erases it. And just that abrupt ripping out of that person from your life leaves you profoundly altered, and you never you never really, I don't think the system ever really recovers from that. I don't think the children ever really will recover from that. I think that they will get on with their lives, and I think the system will move on. But you never really, you're always one person short. You're always one soul short. So I want desperately for young teachers to care about children in ways that Jonathan and Innes did.
Is there one period of each day where you're like, I just want to throw in the towel?
I don't ever feel like I want to throw in the towel. I just get exhausted, and I think that's probably true of everybody in this administration. You want to fix it all right away, and you want to get it done, and you want it to be perfect, and you want it to be accurate, and so forth. So I think probably the most difficult thing in the day is just simply trying to spend the time you need to give it the thought, to give each of these issues the necessary thought that it takes in order to get it to its next level of development.
What have you come to like the most about New York City, and what have you come to dislike the most about New York City?
The dislike part is easier. I got a ticket again. And I tried to talk to this person. I explained to them that there was no sign here. I mean, I can't tell you how annoyed I get that people will just give you a ticket. I mean, I get out, once or twice a month to go do something on my own, and and literally every time I've done it, I've gotten a ticket because I can't figure out where to park. So that's what I hate most.
Did the person know who you were?
I didn't try to make it obvious who I was. I just simply tried on the basis of good common sense and reason. There was no parking. There wasn't any sign. There wasn't any meter. Everybody else was parked there. I was on the Upper West Side. I went to go get a bagel.
When you have the time to just go out on your own, what do you enjoy doing?
We typically will go someplace near the water. I like to go on the Upper West Side and go walk along the river and fish. I typically don't catch anything, but I like very much to just be out there.
Last year, I had asked you if there was one student over the course of the year who affected you, who you thought of a lot, and you had mentioned a little girl. Was there someone else this year, be it a student, a parent, or a teacher, someone who's really given you hope or inspiration, or someone you just think about every day?
The other day, for example, I went up to PS 65 at Mother Hale Academy, and I went into a kindergarten class, and the chairs are about as large as my leg, and all the kids came around me and said, I can read, I can read, I can read. And so I opened up the book, and they began to read. And as they began to read, some of the kids basically they'd been through this story several times, obviously, so they could kind of like whisper. And some little boy was standing next to me, and he didn't want to read out loud. So as he would see the pages turn, he would whisper in my ear what it was saying. So there's just pieces of life like that, Jeff, that are just incredibly rich. I will take all of that into my soul, and it makes me better. I mean, it really does. It has a very healing impact on me.
When you hear those kids say, I can read, does that say to you in your mind that everything you're doing up here is reaching this level down here?
Yeah, these are jobs that you don't often get closure in. I'm a person who needs closure from time to time. And as I look at a school or a classroom that is improving, I hear kids talking about how much they can read or how much they like to read, or they're carrying books, and they really have access to a rich array of literature in their school or in their classroom. I feel very accomplished in that. I feel very good about myself and about the prospect of changing the system.
And Crew promises more changes to come in his third year in office. Some of the major issues at the fore are special education, programs for gifted students, bilingual education, and the creation of year-round programs. Only time will tell whether he can overcome the economic and legislative obstacles that still stand in his way. As we do every year, we will follow all of the issues that will